All right, so in the previous video, I explained CPP and EI, and one of the examples I used was for 42,000. For the first bit of explaining I do for income tax, I am going to use 42,000 as well. So 42,000 will be for the income tax amounts, and I just realized I don't have those open, so I'm sorry to waste your time for a second. These will all be given to you in Teams, by the way. So you will have these documents so you can do your own calculations and kind of look at them. The main one is going to be this one. So this will be in Teams. It is the one pager kind of for calculating these deductions. And then the other ones will be resources that you need for calculating your federal and provincial tax. So let's start with federal. So as I said, I am going to use 42,000 for the first part of the video. So here it says annual gross pay. So I fill in that 42,000. Then it says base amount of $0. So one thing I should have explained, sorry, is each of these are different tax brackets. So you'll see they're bolded. So if your taxable income is $48,535 or less, this is going to be the bracket you look at and nothing else. Once you get down to this last part here, you're done. You don't need to keep looking. Then if your income that you researched is between 48,535 and 97,069, this is the tax bracket you're going to use. Once you calculate, you're done. Okay? So like I said, I'm going to concentrate on the first two brackets because most people's income will fall between those first two brackets. If you happen to get an income that is above one of those two brackets, message me if you can't figure out the math for yourself. It'll work very similar anyway, but just message me and we'll do it together. So the first one, if you do research an income that's 48,535 or less, your math's going to be pretty easy. Now, that's not to say you should aim for that just for that reason. Obviously, most people want to make more money, but just to explain that if you are in that first tax bracket, the math is fairly easy. So let's say our annual gross pay is 42,000. So I fill that in here. The next part says base amount. That will always be given to you no matter what tax bracket we're in. So in this one, it's 0. So then it tells you here, annual gross pay minus the base amount. So 42,000 minus 0. Obviously, 42,000 minus 0 is still 42,000. That's why this first tax bracket is nice and easy. Then we are taxed at 15% in this first tax bracket. So we take our answer from line 38, so that 42,000 that we just calculated, and we times it by 0.15. And when you do 42,000 times 0.15, you get 6,300. So 6,300. Then again, you keep reading. So the next part, it says taxes on the base amount, $0. Keep reading. So again, that'll be given to you. Keep reading. It said add lines 40 and 41. So line 40, line 41. So 6,300 plus 0, which is 6,300. And these line numbers come from your actual income tax forms, by the way, if you're wondering why the very first thing that you're looking at is line 36, it's because it's line 36 on the actual income tax form. So that's where those line numbers come from. But yeah, that's how it works. So that's your first tax bracket explained. It's very easy for the first tax bracket. Fill in the gross pay, follow the instructions. For the second tax bracket, it's also pretty easy. So I'll go over that. It's still pretty much follow the directions. It's just that you won't be subtracting or adding 0. You'll have actual numbers to add and subtract. So that's the only reason why they're a little more complicated. So I'll go over that in a second. I just want to take this 6,300 and copy it onto our worksheet. So we just calculated our federal tax deduction and we found it to be 6,300. Done. So then we'll look at our provincial tax deduction. So I'm going to look at the provincial tax deduction for 42,000 before we carry on. Okay, so I've done my federal tax deductions for 42,000. Now I'm going to look at my New Brunswick tax deductions for 42,000, which again falls in this first bracket. So we'll go very easily. So annual gross pay, I fill in 42,000. Base amount is 0. Same thing as before, annual gross pay minus the base amount. So 42,000 minus 0, which is still 42,000. The provincial tax rate for this bracket is 9.68%. So we take our answer from step 3 and we times it by 0.0968. And when you do that, you get 4,065.60. And then taxes on the base amount, $0. So then it says add steps 5 and 6. So add these two numbers. So just 4,065.60. And then this will be the amount that I fill in again on my little worksheet. That was my total for my provincial tax. And then I would add them together for my total income tax deduction. And then this is the number that I will carry over onto my onto my reality project. So 10,665.60. And then to find the rest of it, you would add up all of your deductions. Then your net annual pay is your gross pay, subtract your total deductions. You fill that number in here, and then define what that is monthly. You take this answer and you divide by 12. And that is that as far as the rest of that calculation is concerned. Now, for the rest of the taxes. So for the provincial and federal tax, did I pick the same number? Yes, I did. So for the next tax bracket, I am going to do an amount of $58,000. So just really quickly, I am going to erase my gross amount here. And I am going to fill in 58,000. So that puts me in the second tax bracket for both provincial and federal. And because I've changed my gross, I'm going to erase all of these numbers. Now, I'm not going to bother calculating CPP and EI. I just want to look at income tax for this video. So I'm going to go to my worksheet to start. Now, again, I'm not going to bother with CPP and EI, so I'm just going to look at this bottom part, and I'm going to calculate my federal and provincial tax, and then I will add them together. So starting with the federal, because I am at 58,000, that puts me in the second tax bracket. So the first thing I do is just fill in that 58,000. So annual gross pay, 58,000. Then you'll see the next line says base amount, and it says 48,535. Then the next line after that says your annual gross pay minus the base amount. So this 58,000 minus the 48,535. That gives you 9,465. So that 9,465, that's the amount that you're going to pay taxes on for this bracket. Basically, the way that it works, the way it was described to me, is the tax brackets are like buckets. So your first bucket fills up. So your first bucket fills up at $48,535. And once that bucket is full, it starts to overflow into another bucket. And it starts to overflow into another bucket. And whatever it fills, that's the amount that you calculate for the next tax bracket. So you're charged 15% on that first bucket, and then only the amount that overflows into the next bucket is charged a higher tax rate. So I thought that was a really good explanation. Sorry, my drawing's not very good, but I thought that was a pretty good explanation of how the tax brackets work. So anyway, like I said, so we take our 58,000, you subtract the maximum amount from the previous tax bracket, which will be filled in here. Once you do that, you're left with 9,465, and then that is the amount that you calculate for the rest. So that's 20.5%. So we take our answer from here, 9,465, and we times it by 0.205. And when you do that, you get $1,940.32. Then the taxes on the base amount from the previous column, so the maximum taxes from the previous column is 7,280. So then we add those two numbers, and that will tell you what your taxes are on 58,000. So you take your 1,940.32, you add it with 7,280, and you get 9,220.32. And that's your total federal tax deduction if your gross pay was 58,000. So you'd fill that in. Oh, sorry, wrong sheet. You'd fill that in on your worksheet. That's your annual federal tax. So what is happening? Why? 9,220.32. Now, in case the video cuts me off, which I think it probably will soon, your provincial tax is going to work very, very similarly. So you would go to the provincial tax page. We said that our gross pay is 58,000, and then it's set up to function in the exact same way. It just has some slightly different numbers. So the next thing you would do is 58,000 subtract 43,401. That leaves you with 14,599. That's the amount that you're charged taxes on. Taxes for this bracket is 14.82%. So you take your 14,599 and you times it by 0.1482. You get 2,163.57. You add that with this number here, and you get 6,364.79. And then that's your total for the provincial tax deduction. So that goes on this worksheet here. Add those two together, and that gives you your total annual income tax. So in case I get timed out, that will be the amount that you transfer over onto the reality project. So 9,220.32 plus 6,364.79, $15,585.11. So that's what you transfer over onto your reality project for income tax. So basically just use the worksheet. So that first worksheet is kind of your one pager that allows you to transfer information onto this annual deductions. And then I gave you two separate kind of worksheets that explain the federal and provincial taxes. It gives you a walk down, tells you what to do step by step, and you just find the bracket that applies to you and follow the steps for that bracket only. Okay, so I hope that makes sense.